Welcome to Hockey Wiz Talks podcast. Today I'll be previewing the Stanley Cup Finals. In this podcast, I preview the Stanley Cup Finals and make predictions on who I think might win the Conn Smythe. The 2023 Stanley Cup Finals is between the Vegas Golden Knights and Florida Panthers. Game 1 will be played on Saturday at 8 p.m. on TNT, TBS, CBS, and Sportsnet. The Vegas Golden Knights finished the regular season with a 51-22-9 record, for a total of 111 points. They won the first round against the Winnipeg Jets 4-1, the second round against the Edmonton Oilers 4-2, and the conference finals against the Dallas Stars 4-2, for a showdown against the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup Finals. Whereas the 8th-seeded Florida Panthers finished the regular season with a 42-32-8 record for a total of 92 points. They beat the President's Trophy winning Boston Bruins 4-3 in the first round in Game 7. Then they beat another top seed Toronto Maple Leafs 4-1 in the second round. And then they swept the Metro winning Carolina Hurricanes 4-0 in the conference finals for a showdown against the Vegas Golden Knights. The Vegas Golden Knights are back in the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time since their inaugural season in 2017-18, when they lost 4-1 to the Washington Capitals. They will be up against the Florida Panthers, who returned to the finals for the first time since 1996, when they were swept 4-0 by the Colorado Avalanche. Neither team has won a Stanley Cup previously, and this is their first meeting in the playoffs. There are 6 players who remain on the Golden Knights from their original expansion team. Forwards William Carrier, William Karlsson, Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith, and defensemen Brayden McNabb and Shea Theodore. All have made significant contributions this season to get back to the Stanley Cup Finals. Golden Knights defensemen Alec Martinez and Jonathan Quick won the Stanley Cup as part of the Los Angeles Kings in 2012 and 2014. Defenseman Alex Pietrangelo and Ivan Barbashev won it in 2019 as members of the St. Louis Blues. Florida Panthers center Eric Staal won the Stanley Cup as a member of the Hurricanes in 2006 and played in the Stanley Cup Finals in 2021 with the Montreal Canadiens. He will be trying to win a Stanley Cup with his brother Mark Staal with the Panthers. And now a word from our sponsor. Check out my scouting blog at hockeywiz777scouting.com. Listen to my scouting blog podcast on podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/hockeywiz777scouting. Jack Eichel is playing in his first ever Stanley Cup Final. 8 years after he was selected by the Buffalo Sabres with the second overall pick in 2015, one slot behind Edmonton Oilers captain Connor McDavid. Eichel has finally found a home in his second season with the Golden Knights. He led them with 18 points in 17 playoff games. He leads a balanced offense for the Golden Knights, who have 6 players with at least 14 points during the postseason. For the Florida Panthers, Matthew Tkachuk leads the Florida Panthers with 21 points in 16 playoff games after an NHL career-high 109 points in 79 regular season games. A Hart Trophy finalist as the NHL's most valuable player, Tkachuk scored 4 goals in the 4-game sweep against the Carolina Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Finals, including 2 in overtime and the series-clinching goal with 4.9 seconds left in the third period of Game 4. He is considered a serious candidate to win the Conn Smythe Trophy this year as playoff MVP. The other game breaker for the Florida Panthers is Alexander Barkov. The captain of the Florida Panthers is one of the best two-way centers in the league. Although he isn't putting up monster numbers in the playoffs, he is still playing a monster two-way game. He's excellent on face-offs, he plays in all situations, and is excelling in other areas of the game. The other game breaker for the Vegas Golden Knights is their captain, Mark Stone. Mark Stone is one of the best two-way players in the league when on his game. Although he's not flashy, he seems to always come up clutch when the team needs him the most. He does all the little things that are required to win games, and he's just so solid at making the right plays on the ice. Jonathan Marchessault and Riley Smith are 2 ex-Florida Panthers that will definitely want to get revenge on their former clubs. These are 2 players to watch for, as Jonathan Marchessault especially seems to be heating up in the playoffs, while Riley Smith is a really good two-way player that excels shorthanded. William Karlsson is going to be a very important player in this series. He is their best defensive forward and is going to see a lot of ice time against Matthew Tkachuk. He is usually matched up against the opponent's top offensive threat, He did a masterful job in the second round, matched up against Connor McDavid, and was instrumental at limiting Dallas Stars center Roope Hintz to 2 assists in the final 5 games in the West Final. Carter Verhaeghe has been huge this postseason. Although he only has 6 goals and 15 points in 16 games, he is a plus 11, and he had 3 game-winning goals, which were all clutch game-winning goals that were instrumental to their playoff run. Ivan Barbashev may not be the biggest name, nor is this game the flashiest, but he just does a little bit of everything, and he has been an instrumental player to Vegas' postseason run. He has 6 goals and 15 points in 17 playoff games, and is a plus 12. The X factor for the Florida Panthers is Sam Bennett, who is making a huge impact in the playoffs at both ends of the ice. Although he only has 11 points in the playoffs, he is making his impact felt physically and sets the tone early and often. Selected 4th overall by the Calgary Flames in the 2014 draft, Bennett rejuvenated his career since being traded to Florida. At this point, it's hard to fathom Sergei Bobrovsky is not the playoffs' #1 goalie. After backing up Alex Lyon through the first 3 games against Boston, Bobrovsky replaced Lyon during Game 3 and helped upset Boston, who took a 3-1 lead in the best-of-7 series before the Panthers ultimately rallied to advance. Since then, Bobrovsky has been 11-2 with a 2.21 GAA and .935 save percentage in 14 games, and is a candidate for the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP. Adin Hill took over as starter after Laurent Brossoit got injured in Game 3 of the Western Conference second round against the Oilers. Hill was one of 5 goalies used during their season by the Golden Knights, and began the season 4th on the depth chart behind Robin Lehner, Logan Thompson, and Laurent Brossoit. This is Adin Hill's first postseason appearance. He is 7-3 with a 2.07 GAA and .937 save percentage in 9 starts. Check out my hockey blog at hockeywiztalkshockey.blogspot.com. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at HockeyWiz777. The Golden Knights have the most balanced offense in the playoffs. They have 7 players with at least 11 points. Eichel leads with 18 points, followed by Marchessault with 17, Mark Stone with 15, Barbashev with 15, Carlson with 14, Stevenson with 14, and Riley Smith with 11. Vegas scored most of the goals even strength, with an 18.5% efficiency on the power play. Fortunately, they don't take a lot of penalties because their penalty kill is only at 63%. The Florida Panthers have the 6th-ranked power play in the playoffs, converting on 27.9% of its opportunities in 16 games. Their penalty kill has struggled, only having a 71.2% success rate, although 11 of those goals were allowed in the first round against Boston. The Panthers gave up 2 power play goals in 4 games during the Eastern Conference Finals against the Hurricanes, and were 8 for 8 on the penalty kill through their final 3 games. The Panthers are also 6-0 in overtime during the playoffs, and have won 9 straight OT playoff games since 2021. The Vegas Golden Knights win if they continue to dominate 5-on-5, continue to roll 4 lines, and Adin Hill is able to match Sergei Bobrovsky at the other end. Panthers win if Sergei Bobrovsky keeps up his outstanding play, and Matthew Tkachuk continues to come up with big-time goals. My prediction is that the Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup in 6 games over the Vegas Golden Knights, because they just seem to be the hottest team in the league, and because they have had the toughest road in the NHL playoffs thus far, having to gone through Boston, Toronto, and Carolina. Listen to Hockey Wiz Talks podcast on Podbean and Spotify. Check out my travel channel at youtube.com/HockeyWizTravels. Personally, I think it's going to be between Sergei Bobrovsky and Matthew Tkachuk, depending on who performs better in the Stanley Cup Finals. If Florida wins, this is the predicament the NHL is in. Do you give the Conn Smythe Trophy to an aging 34-year-old Russian goalie, or do you give the Conn Smythe Trophy to an American-born superstar forward? Florida does not get here without either of these 2 players, but especially Bobrovsky, as he has been unflappable in net. Unfortunately, because of the politics right now, it's hard to imagine a Russian-born player winning a Conn Smythe Trophy over an American-born player. If Vegas ends up winning, Jack Eichel should win the Conn Smythe Trophy because he led Vegas in points in the playoffs. An honorable mention to both Jonathan Marchessault and William Karlsson, as both came up with clutch goals all playoff long and were instrumental to their playoff run. The Stanley Cup Finals should be very intriguing. It will be interesting to see who comes out on top this series. In my next podcast, I'll be talking about the 2023 NHL Draft.